Hello, I'm Chelsea from Koshas.com. Koshas.com is the first online portal providing curated information and resources in the alternative medicine and holistic healing field. Our goal is to provide the best resources and services in the world of holistic healing, allowing better accessibility to everyone. Today, I am here with Suzanne Wiseman. Suzanne is a registered psychotherapist from Toronto, Canada. She uses a variety of techniques in her clinic work, including EMDR, mindfulness psychodynamic therapy, and neurofeedback. So let's dive into this work today. Suzanne, welcome. Can you please tell us a little about what EMDR is?
Okay, so EMDR is a mouthful. It stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and you don't ever have to remember that. But basically, it's a therapeutic protocol that helps process trauma. So it takes all the little bits and pieces that are frozen in our senses when we're not able to process an event, and it gives it beginning, middle, and end. So when you think of the event, it doesn't feel like you're actually experiencing it. And it also helps you go from a distorted belief about yourself to a positive belief about yourself. So when you get to a positive belief, your life looks so much more different. If I come from not feeling good enough to, yeah, I am good enough, that I approach situations much differently than I would have in the past. So in a nutshell, that's EMDR.
Wonderful. It sounds like a very powerful technique to change the mind and thought patterns. So can you tell us what an EMDR session with you looks like?
Sure. So it begins the same as any other session. It's history taking. I'll go into, there are specific phases, but basically with any kind of therapy, it starts with the relationship. So myself and my client meet. They have a chance to ask questions. I will explain the process and what their goals are, and then eventually we'll start into the EMDR, the actual process. But the main thing is, for any kind of therapy, is that it's a good fit with the therapist. Like, of course, I think I'm a good therapist, but if you don't feel comfortable with me, then I'm not your good therapist. I also do a fair bit of psychoeducation at the first session and throughout, just to explain what trauma is, to normalize some reactions. And oftentimes it's the first time that people have heard it, and it's like, wow, okay, that's why I feel the way I am, or why I'm acting the way that I am.
Yeah, that's powerful for people to understand. And I see that in an EMDR journey, there's 8 phases of this healing journey. Could you walk us through these 8 phases?
Yes. So the first phase is history taking. Again, it's the same as with any therapeutic relationship. History taking, and usually I would explain what the therapeutic process is and answer any questions. And it's also still establishing the relationship. And then the second phase is we establish a calm place. So a calm place can be someplace that's real or imaginary, but it's a place where you can actually feel the most calm, and your worries and things don't come with you. So we actually do a calm place for 2 reasons. They're quite similar. The first one is so that both myself and the client know that if they're triggered during a session or outside of the session, they can calm themselves. They go, yeah, I have my place. It might not take you from 100 to 0, but it'll take you from 100 to 80 or 60 so that you can tolerate. And then the other reason we do a calm place is because some people aren't able to, a calm place doesn't exist for them. Because if they're calm, it means that they're not on guard, right? So then we approach it from a different way. And then this means that there's different work that needs to be done before you can actually start, because it's very important that that we're all on board. So when we say we're all on board, there's parts that come and go, okay, Suzanne, I'm ready, and I just want to do this, and I want to be out in 6 months or 3 months. But if there's parts that are saying like, no way, we can't do that, we can't be calm, we have to honor all of what's being presented. So creating a calm place really helps establish where we need to go. And then in phases 3 to 6, that's the actual processing. And so the actual processing is like, once we have the events that we want to process or the sensory experiences, then I'm going to ask, for any EMDR therapist is going to ask, like, what image represents the worst part or of the event or the sensory experience. I'm going to ask, how disturbing does it feel to you now when you think about it? And then, sorry, I know these. And then, what distorted or negative beliefs do you have about yourself? And what would you like to believe about yourself? And then there's a scale about how true that belief is, that yes, I'm good enough. And then when we go back to the body, what are you noticing in the body? Because everything comes out in our bodies, right? And so what's happening in your body? What emotions are you feeling when I'm bringing this up? And how disturbing does it feel to you? And that's another scale. And each one of those questions is actually activating the right and the left side of your brain. So it's back and forth. So you're never stuck or frozen in one. And that's one of the reasons why EMDR moves more quickly as well, because it's activating. Phase 7 is usually closure, and maybe it's closure because of the appointment's finishing of time, or because it's actually finished up. And then if we're closing because of time, I'll usually ask, or any EMDR therapist will ask, what would you like to do with the feelings or the parts of the event that we haven't had chance to process? Did you want to contain them, or do you want to let them go? And usually actually in the second phase, we'll create a container if that's what they want. So we know that they can always be there. And the container, if they choose to contain it, you can leave it in my office. It can be a container and, up in the clouds, just so that you don't have to walk around with it all the time. And then phase 8 usually is a reevaluation. And a reevaluation is, even if, you come back the following week or our next session, I'm going to ask what might have come up during the last week. What have you noticed? Oh, and also, sorry, in phase 7, I'll often ask just to keep track of what's come up, but just like maybe even a one word, because I don't want you to be triggered or to go into any great detail into something when you're on your own. So in a nutshell, that's what the 8 phases are. EMDR works much more quickly than talk therapy because there's not a lot of talking. So when we're going through the phases and we're actually processing something, it's we use bilateral stimulation. So by that means that we're keeping both sides of the brain engaged, even as we are in the questions. And then in the way that we do that, so if you're in the office, you can follow my fingers, or I have TheraTappers, they vibrate back and forth from one hand to the next. Or if it's virtual like this, we tap, and it's just keeping both sides of the brain engaged. And when we're doing a calm place, it's a slower tap or movement, because I want you to hang out there. But when we're processing something, it's much more quickly, because I don't want you to hang out there. Like we're in and we're out.
Yeah. Wow, it's a very in-depth healing method. There's so many components to it.
Yeah.
And who can benefit most from these sessions?
I'm gonna say most people that access it or that reach out have experienced a traumatic event. And it can be like a one-time traumatic event. It was a car accident. It can be childhood trauma throughout. Most often, it works more quickly with children and teens because their neural pathways are not, they're not as developed. But it's still, so anyone that's experienced trauma, it's extremely helpful for, but it's also helpful for anxiety, addiction, obsessive compulsive disorder. And the reason that it's helpful for those is because most anxiety or anything else has roots in an event, in a traumatic experience.
And as this is about creating new neural pathways, can you explain this simply? Like, how do you create a new pathway in the brain?
Well, yeah. So what we do is you have to make sure that it's processed in all 3 channels. So there's 3 channels. So it's cognitive, where you're thinking, and then your emotional, okay, how you're feeling about an event, and then the sensory experience. And so that's done through repetition. It's even through repetition and stopping and starting, because when we're doing the actual processing, when we're tapping, then I'm going to say, stop, take a breath, and what do you notice? and you're going to share the last thing that comes up for you. And then most often I will get you to notice it again. And what that is also doing, it's like when you're reading a book or you're watching something on television or something and you're interrupted. We never go back to the exact same spot or the same feeling. So every time I interrupt you, what are you noticing? When you go back to it, it's at a different place and the charge is diminished, if that makes sense. And so when we get it through all three channels, it helps create new neural pathways. And so the ultimate goal, of course, is that it no longer feels like you're experiencing it and that you have a stronger or more positive belief about yourself.
Oh, wonderful. And so what is the most profound change that you see in your clients after working together?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I was trying to think because there are so many different kinds of profound changes. Like we can even be processing something and all of a sudden you'll just see the client smile or their whole body shifts because what's being held in their body before, is just tense or scrunched or their head's down. Now their shoulders are back and they're like, oh yeah. Or it's like, that really wasn't my fault. Or it's okay for me to feel my feelings. Or, I did the best I can. Like I have one client who was able to understand the physical sensations that she was having in her body, like why they were, why they existed, where they came from, and that you could let them go. And you can just see their bodies change. And it's a gift, and it's so humbling to be able to experience that or to be part of that journey. It really, truly is.
Yeah, that's a powerful change when they can leave as a different person.
Yeah.
And when is the best time to seek an EMDR session? Is it immediately after a trauma happens, or would it be later on in their healing journey?
There's no best time. Earlier on is probably better. It depends what it is. Only that what happens, and it's going to happen in any kind of therapeutic relationship or whatever protocol you're going to do, is that you need to be stabilized enough to be able to process. And then, of course, the EMDR, we have a lot of things that will help you stabilize the calm place and looking at parts. The only time it's not a good time to do it quickly is if it is involving the courts. And the reason for that is because once an event is processed, it's no longer as emotionally charged. And so if it were me, if I needed to present at court and I'm not feeling the same emotions about it anymore, it can question the validity of what I'm trying to say, or because I process it. But other than that, maybe you want to actually cut that out. That it's always helpful. It's always helpful.
Yeah, interesting. That's good to know. And sometimes you combine EMDR with neurofeedback. Can you explain to us how these two therapies work in combination?
Yes. So I use a neurofeedback system. It's called Neuroptimal, and it's actually considered a training and as opposed to a therapy. But what all neurofeedback does is that it helps calm your central nervous system so you're able to respond to things differently. And it also helps rewire your brain. It will create new neural pathways. And then what my system does, it also it trains the brain to be able to come back to the present and flow and transition from one state to another. So when I'm using them together, the neurofeedback really accentuates a calm place or just calm. It increases the window of tolerance, and so that the client is able to process or share. And then it's working with the EMDR, it's creating new neural pathways. So it's really, they strengthen one another. And then for me in my office, usually I do the combination is that we'll do the EMDR first, and they'll finish with a neurofeedback session so that I know, they're in my office for another 33 minutes. So I know that they're calm enough and able to move forward with their day. So that gives me some reassurance, but it really, it makes a big shift. And what the neurofeedback also does is that because it's helping create new pathways, in a lot of ways, you don't have to visit places that you might have had to visit or that you shouldn't have had to visit in the first place. So it really, they strengthen one another, and they really, strengthen the new neural pathways and the ability to calm and the ability to be in the present. So even if it's here in my office and we're doing an EMDR session and a client is escalating, part of it is, I'm going to help ground them, but it's also, they can come back to the present, like, I'm here, I'm in Suzanne's office. It's, September 20th, 2022, not when the actual event happened. So they really work so well together. And both work well on their own also.
Yeah, but it does sound like a good combination.
Yeah.
And so where can people contact you for more information about your services?
Okay, so I actually have, I've got two websites. One is, it's my counseling website. It's wisemancounselingservices.ca. And then the other one is just about neurofeedback, and it's neurofeedbacksolutions.ca. And then I also have my Instagram, which is neurofeedback_swiseman.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for your time today, Suzanne. It's been wonderful learning about EMDR and how that process works. So thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Thanks.